Hey folks, welcome to another Agency Action Show. My name is Kurt Von Ahnen. I'm here with my awesome co-host, Toby Cryns, owner of The Mighty Mo. And today we're going to talk a little bit about some stuff we got from a guy down under.
Yeah, this is from
Toby?
Simon, and he says, and this is going to be a long quote, so I'm starting the quote here. He says, I'm a small web agency owner from Perth, Australia. Really enjoying your Agency Action podcast and glad that I found it. Your real world discussions about your businesses are very relatable, and I hope the pod lasts a long time. Thank you, Simon. Super kind. We're totally open to flattery.
Thank
Keep
you.
it coming. And then he goes on.
Like and subscribe now
before they
before
take
it's
us
too
off
late.
the air.
Limited spaces available.
Could you do an episode about paid or unpaid discovery? Things like how to sell, the necessity for it to projects, so how to sell discovery, how to structure the session or sessions about discovery, topics covered and questions covered, all about discovery. How do you or could you use discovery to differentiate yourself from competitors and position yourself as a business strategist rather than the web guy? I've done a handful of successful paid discovery sessions, but always looking to improve my process, and I'd love to hear your takes. So, Kurt, what is discovery? Why even do it?
First off, in his question, how long did you call yourself the web guy?
I still do. Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, so I literally used to put
Yeah.
Kurt Von Ahnen web guy as my X thing, or Twitter when it was the day. And then I realized over time as my agency grew, I didn't want to be the web guy because I recognized corporately how people use that phrase or use that term. Like I had called myself the web guy, but then I realized in a higher level corporate space, it was downspeak, right? It wasn't speaking to I'm the consultant or I'm the the IT professional or whatever phrase you want to put it. It's like, do you want to be the trash man or do you want to be the sanitation engineer?
If I can interrupt and challenge that a little bit, it depends. You're talking corporate. Totally agree. But when you're talking to mom and pops, they just need a web guy.
They just need a web guy. Yeah. So it's so like situational awareness. It's such a fluid liquid thing. So I don't know that I would put web guy on my business cards anymore or on my social posts. But to your point, if I'm talking to a donut shop and they say, hey, I really need you to be my web guy. Hey, I'll be your web guy. Sure. Right. But it's such a unique, it's like a differentiator, It's like there's certain people in our space right now that are really pushing this idea that we are professionals. And if you're going to be professional and only do these things. And it's like, well, no, because we are in a liquid space. We're serving a broad swath of public. So who are you talking to? And then what are your needs? And I think discovery is very much a use case or needs-based situation. I don't think it's a cookie cutter thing.
There are corporate entities, we're talking nonprofits and things with boards, particularly people who would send an RFP generally appreciate discovery as something they'd pay for. It helps their process.
Yeah.
Mom and pops, the donut store, the plumber, not super interested in discovery. They just want a darn website. Why can't you build it today? I don't understand why it's taking so long.
Yeah. Yeah. But that gets into the average person talking to the service writer at a car dealership, right? My check engine light's on, right? So you drive your car in there and you're like, hey, turn off my check engine light. And they're like, whoa, slow down. It's not that easy, buttercup. We're going to have to diagnose it. We're going to have to give you an estimate. We're going to have to this, we're going to have to that. And the customer's driving the car is like, just turn off the stupid light. Like what's the deal here? And these smaller entities that you're talking about, Toby, if we don't communicate properly, they feel like it's the check engine light for the website, right? They're like, just build me a 5-page site. And you're like, okay, but we need to what's your about me story? What's your, where do you want people to go? What do you want the user journey to be in your site? Like, where do you want to direct the traffic? And they're like, what are you even talking about? I just want people to book me to plumb their houses. And then you're like, all right, now we're getting there.
Right.
That's the first step.
I have a client
now we're
right
getting
now
there.
that I'm really, not just me, my whole team is struggling with. It's at a price point, this project. It's web design. We're rethinking the navigation. We're thinking user journeys. And the owner of the company is deeply involved and is not interested in any of this stuff, even though he's already paid in full for the service, and we're struggling
Yeah.
trying to figure out what does this person need and how can we get what we need when we're speaking kind of different languages.
So we have a similar project at Mañana No Mas right now. We've already launched the site, but it's a directory of multiple businesses. And so whenever I have one of these things where there's multiple stakeholders, I have this, hey, I need somebody to be my single point of contact. I'm not going to be responsible for talking to 30 different business owners about what they'd like to see on the website. I need a center point of contact. And so we did that. And then we ended up like, it's the same thing like you just described, Toby. It's like you have this project, you need some assets, and nothing's coming. Nothing's coming. So you just start winging things a little bit. You work with your single point of contact, and we go, okay, let's put up the site. Let's put up a tutorial for the 30 businesses so they understand what the site does and how it works. And then, mind you, for 2 months, they didn't send their pictures. They didn't send their About Us content. They didn't send the links to their social media sites. And then we put up the website, and now we've got 30 different groups of opinions coming in, right? Where's my picture? Where's my logo? Where's my, it's like, you never sent it. We had to
It's
make all this
interesting. I
crud
was
up.
thinking about discovery today. There are certain types of products that have discovery implicitly and explicitly built into the product. One of those that we sell is SEO. We don't do an SEO project without discovery. Discovery is 80% of the project, where we're looking at research, trying to figure out what's needed. Whereas a lot of web design projects that we do don't need a lot. They come with people just have an intuitive understanding of web design a lot of times, especially if we're talking to like a mid to senior level marketer. They kind of already know about user journeys. They have experience, they have data. And so a lot less conversations around discovery oftentimes happen.
So let's cut to the obvious. Like, so when even do the discovery? So we're talking about if or needed or whatever, but like, so where do you draw where's your border at? When do you say this project requires
We
discovery?
actually do a lot of discovery for very small things, and we've built that into our process. So a client might come to us and say, an existing customer could say, we need a feature built, or there's a bug. And we might say, we need 2 hours to research this to give you the estimate. And they've been really, really good about it. Almost everybody says, I understand, that makes sense, let's go. So at a very small level, we do it every day for almost everything that we think. I'll look at it and I'll say, does this need discovery? And I don't frame it in that word. I'm just thinking like, is this more than 15 minutes or not? If it's more than 15 minutes, then we're going to charge for discovery, basically, even if the total project is 4 hours. And then on the bigger level, we try to work it into selling it as part of our process. So when we're doing a redesign, we pitch conversations as part of our, just you're going to hire us. That includes conversations around your navigation, your content. What do we want to communicate? What are the flows? Where do we want people to start from? Where are they going to go? It might even include some basic SEO conversations about what are people searching for when they find you on Google.
Yeah. I find that interesting. Do you consider like the ongoing like status meetings in the project to be part of the discovery, or do you like forecast those meetings post discovery? Like for me at my company, we do discovery, and then as part of the discovery output, I say, hey, based on the number of stakeholders and the scale of this project, I project we're going to need 10 meetings over an 8-month period. And that's factored into your proposal.
Yeah, I don't do it at that. This is interesting. And I think this is something that's a difference between our businesses in a way, that I don't forecast in that detail. I just try to get a sense. This seems like it's going to be a bigger project in terms of meetings. This one's going to require more meetings. And I don't do a big bunch of like math. I just go, let's charge in a way that includes those meetings.
So here's why I do that. And I think people listening to us might go, oh my God, that happened to me too. In my mind, I'm pitching this thing and I'm thinking, okay, let's break this project into fourths, right? So let's say it's going to be a 4-month project. I'm thinking we'll have a monthly meeting just as a status thing, make sure everything's happy. They know what's going on. And then we do like that fourth meeting is more like a pre-launch meeting. Like, here's the review of the site and we're going to go live on Monday, or live on, if it's you, Tuesday at noon. So I think that that's it. next thing you know, this client is like saying, "Hey, can we meet tomorrow? I have a couple of quick questions. Hey, can we meet on Thursday? Hey, I know it's Saturday, but I had a kind of an important question." And it's like, "Wait a minute. I don't have an extra 3 hours a week to meet with you or 4 hours a week to meet with you. We booked this job at a certain level." So that's why I started putting, "We're going to schedule these meetings. It's part of your proposal. This is this," because I want to avoid that. And then if that starts to happen, if they start to get that uneasy feeling, I just ask them. I say, "Hey, well, your proposal specifies X number of meetings. Um, is there a reason? Is there a specific thing that we're doing that's making you feel uneasy or anxious about the project beyond normal? Because if there is, let's try to fix that. And if there's not, and you just want more attention, are you prepared to pay
Yeah.
the difference?
A
We
lot
can
of
add
this comes
that."
down to what you're describing is more project expectations, maybe, and and planning. And I think as we've grown to bigger projects in particular, that sort of planning is becoming very valuable as the let's say we're
Yeah.
doing a bigger nonprofit site and now we have a board that we're trying to impress, really, like whatever that means. We want them to come out of it with a great review for us, and so we're trying to get there. um, when we think about selling this, though, how does naming discovery affect the perceived value? Because some other things that you could name it are strategic blueprint, website roadmap. It's probably 100 other things you could call it.
Yeah. It's so unique because I like the phrase discovery, right? Like, we're doing this, right? Um, like I said, in the automotive field, we would call it diagnostics. We're going to examine the whatever. Um, I've referred to it often as a project consult. Like, you have a project, and we're going to consult you on that project. It's a project consult. Um, so I've tried discovery, and discovery to me, and people might giggle at this, I don't know, but I mean, it just feels like Dora the Explorer. I think sometimes people just go, "Discovery? What do you need to discover? I thought you were the expert." Like, I just think there's like a weird connotation that comes from it. So I agree with you. I think naming does change the value of it. And I think if we overuse the term discovery, I think we almost take the value out of it, right? And then people are like, "Why am I paying for this anyway? You should know what you're doing." Whereas if I say, "No, this is going to be a diagnostic of your situation, or this is a specific project consult session," then they're like, "Oh, yeah, because everyone's unique and your use case is unique, and we have to
Yeah,
treat
and I
it that
think
way."
most everybody has a framework for thinking about discovery, and they just use different language. Like, and someone might say, "Oh, we're gonna build a website, and we have the first phase is the planning phase," and maybe they totally get that. Whereas, like somebody who's a associate marketer at a big corporation might say, "Discovery, get it, let's go." Like,
So, I, again, use case, size of project. There's a lot of times where I'll use the term discovery and it's free discovery. Like, it's totally free. And I say, "Hey, what you're describing sounds like a pretty straightforward project, but before I say yes, I'm going to need credentials to look at the back end of your website and just to give things a quick look over before we agree to anything." Because you never know what someone's put in the back end of a website. And so that, to me, that's still discovery, but that's more like covering my own butt discovery, right? That's a free 15-minute to 30-minute kind of just look-see to see if the task they're requesting, because I always, I'm paranoid. In the back of my mind, I'm like, this doesn't seem that hard. They probably could have figured this out on their own. Why are they asking me to do it? Why? Because there's probably something goofy back there that's a conflict. And so I just do that to cover my butt. That, to me, that's free discovery. Anything more than 15 minutes or a half hour of my time to look at something's going to require some funding. And I think that's where we add value to the project. And it's paid discovery for me at that
been
point.
I've been running into a question recently. We've been replying to RFPs, requests for proposals, at a much higher clip than we've done in
Yeah.
the past. And it's been a strategic move for us. We've been highly successful at that. However, we've also had to do tons of free discovery as part of that process to win these deals. At least we think we do. We don't know what's actually needed. But let's say previously I might have done 30 minutes of discovery prior, after a sales call or before a sales call. 30 minutes, let's talk. Well, interesting. Here's what it's going to cost. With these RFPs where you're talking to boards, and we've been presenting in person, we do a lot of manual MBA level market research by an actual MBA that does the work and puts together a really great presentation with all the data we think we need to close the deal, which is significant. It might be 10 hours of an MBA's time. That's expensive time. And that's now built into our pricing.
Yeah. Yeah. But what you just described, though, is like one of those things. It's like we see it all the time, freelancers especially, right? Because they don't have that agency mindset yet. And they're like, I could just build that for $700. I could just build that for $500. And they're still operating in that space of, yeah, I could just whoop that up, right? And then you and I are having a conversation about discovery and matching a project to business needs and use case and these things. And you mentioned boards, right? So they're dealing with multiple stakeholders, and I discussed multiple meetings. And so when you talk about project management at that scale, that's where all this pricing comes in at. And that's why I think some people might listen to our podcast, Toby, and just think we're full of it sometimes because we'll say, oh, that's a $10,000 job or $15,000 job or higher. And I think there's still a ton of listeners and viewers out there that maybe watch our episodes and go, man, these guys are crazy talking about these high prices. How do you sell that? Well, this is how you sell that. It's like, for me, you mentioned request for quote, right? But it's like a lot of times if you offer someone paid discovery and you give them a proposal, if you voice to them, hey, we're going to give you a detailed proposal and you can shop that proposal to any other provider you want. Well, now you're the one that has provided a valuable service to them. You've given them basically all the building blocks, and now they can go shop the price or make their own decision or do whatever. If you did all that for free and then didn't get the job, that's a huge waste. So I think it's important to actually sell the discovery and then know that people have, you give them a proposal, and then that proposal, if there's no changes or no negotiation, that proposal becomes the scope of work in the contract. But then to me, it's like there's discovery, proposal, and scope of work contract, right? Because it all comes in
I think
in a series.
you're totally wrong, and you're totally right. I've sold what you're talking about. So there
You're
when we talk
totally
about
wrong.
sales, it's all about getting that first dollar. If you can get $1, you can get $50,000. That's my belief. And so if what you described, and by the way, we've done it. If I can sell that, I'll sell it every day and take the win and get the project. However, alternatively, I also believe strongly if I'm talking to a potential client about discovery, I'm losing. If we're in a conversation about what's the value of discovery, that's a losing conversation for me because we're not talking about where they're going to be. We're not talking about the beautiful design we're going to build, how we're, more thoughtful and more creative.
Yeah. So your statement here is like this new sales training that's around that says, don't sell what you're doing, sell the results of what you've done. Like, so you're selling this is what you're going to experience using us, regardless of the discovery.
I think
We're going to make your life easier. You're going to have a prettier website. You're going to
that's the
generate more
exciting
income.
conversation for the buyer.
Yeah. Yeah. And those results, I believe, really are independent of what the proposal states, because you and I both know that somebody could take an RFP, right, and say, okay, check the boxes. Yeah, we could do headers. We could do footers. We could do, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, that's a website. We can make that. But there's a total difference in outcome between two different agency houses.
And I think, though, at the core, what we're talking about is, and this is, I believe, what we both recommend very strongly, you need a discovery process on every project. It doesn't need to be sold as such. It doesn't need to be, it can just be worked into your pricing. But whether you're assigning work to someone else or you're doing it yourself, that should be priced in.
Yeah. Yeah. So For me, I use this digital tablet every time I meet with a client, and I always take notes, very fastidious notes, and it's with everybody I meet with. That has become an invaluable tool for me, and I think that falls within like that free discovery, right? Like I'm always taking those notes. I always know what direction we're going in. Even if I meet with a client and they're like, "Oh, I just had a question about whatever," I note that down. Like, "Oh, crud, they had a question about that." So did that mean that I didn't communicate that well enough? So we're always updating our processes, right? I think you hit the nail on the head when you said there's always a process for everything that we do. Um, let's let's switch gears a little bit though, because we're talking about this is what we do. Da, 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 da. I think the real question people have is like, okay, discovery, yes. So we've both said it's needed. How much do you charge? How much money is in this? Is this a is this a thing that sustains a company, or is this a thing that's like
Well, this is
icing
a
on the
great
cake to a
question.
company?
Discovery can be converted into recurring revenue. During discovery, for example, let's say you discover that they have insecure hosting or slow hosting. That's part of our process, is to look for these upsells in our discovery process. So that's another way to look at it. Discovery can feed new revenue, and it usually does. It should, because that's your goal, is you're trying to figure out where to go. I mean, you want to be honest, and hopefully there's odds are what they're asking is not the entirety of what they need. So to me, discovery gets us there. In terms of what to charge, yeah, this is the pricing question. As much as you can honestly, reasonably, fairly get. That's, that's my answer to everything, everywhere.
Yeah. I'm always so curious about this because people have no clue, right? It's like, how much to put brakes on my truck? Well, the brake pads are $190 and then it's 2.5 hours of labor. Well, what? Right? Because then how's my car done in 30
Right?
minutes? Right? I think ours in the digital space is so similar to that, right? So it's like, is it a flat fee? Is it hourly? For me, I sell based on value sales. It's a flat fee. Like, hey, we're going to do this. And I couldn't even justify it by hours. I don't think I could, because I used to say, oh, it's $500. It's $500. It's $500. Then it became 1,000. Then it became 1,500. Then it became 2,500. And then I think I told you this on one of our shows before. I was brought into a discovery situation on a group call. And I found out afterwards that group discovery call was like a $10,000 value. And I thought to myself, man, how much am I leaving on the table? Am I talking to the wrong clients? Am I not brave or strong enough to sell the larger number? For most of our projects, we're still in the $2,000 to $2,500 range, but it's always a flat fee and not hourly. And then I think the biggest question there is, whatever you charge, do you keep it, or do you absorb it into the proposal and make that kind of a, help sell the
I
job?
think that's the sales pitch. Like, that's doesn't even matter. The question is, like, you need money to sustain the business, whether you get that from the discovery or
Yeah.
elsewhere, or however. Because let's say you didn't include it in. Let's say you're just like, no, you're paying for discovery. Your proposal's a totally different bill. You're still, as a business owner, it's part of the equation of how you price the second thing, whether it's absorbed or not. Personally, I absorb it, and that's why when I tell people, when I've sold this product in the past, the product being discovery process, I say, whatever you spend on this, we're going to deduct that from the final cost of the proposal. But as everybody knows, or at least can intuitively understand, we've increased the price of that proposal by that much. And this is the same that's true of everything that is sold anyway. Anytime you get a coupon for something, it means the price already could absorb that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's impressive. I really beat myself up a little bit about this because um as a freelancer, I didn't charge discovery at all. And then I became an agency and I was like, wait a minute, I've got to compensate, because what if I had to pay someone else to do this right now? What if I gave this to a team member? I'd have to pay that team member. And I know a lot of people would say, well, that's the risk of doing business. You shouldn't have a risk of doing business. You're doing business. That implies that you're bringing in revenue. So I started charging more and more for the discovery, but I'm wondering, how does that pricing affect the perceived credibility? Like, I'm on that one call and I found out afterwards it was like a $10,000 call, right? So those people in that call, they really believe they were talking to the experts of, and in that particular situation, ironically enough, I was the expert on the call for what we were discussing. And so then I thought to myself, how much value am I just giving away that I could be charging for? And the number is a
No,
little
there's something
arbitrary,
to what
but
you're saying though.
does it?
So let's say they knew that you were being paid. I'm just going to make up a number. Let's say you were being paid $200 to be on that call. And if the audience of the call knew that, you have way less credibility. If they believe you were being paid 10 grand, then they're like, oh, let's listen. I was on a call 2 weeks ago with a client. I wasn't charging, like they've been with us for 15 years. I wasn't charging my full rate, but the people on the call from this client thought they were paying me an arm and a leg. Like there were comments on the call like, let's be quick here, Toby's really expensive, da 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 da. And it helped. I believe that it helped. When I spoke, they listened. When I was quiet, they're like, we better wrap this up and get back to Toby.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so here we are saying discovery's part of every project, everything. Is it mandatory for new clients or is it something you skip for new
I think it's
clients?
mandatory every time. And I have broken this rule recently and it's come back to bite me. And it's my prerogative as a business owner to do what I want. But when I don't follow my own processes, sometimes I get screwed.
Yeah. Every time I don't follow my own process. And I'm not going to say screwed. It just adds so much friction that it's not worth it. We have a rule at Manana Namas that all of our work is prepaid. And the nicest, sweetest, most lovable people on the planet will be like, oh, hey, could we bother you midstream to do a little extra XYZ? And I go, sure, I can just add it to next month's invoice for you, right? Because they're being sweet. I'm being nice. I want to be flexible. And then I send next month's invoice and like a day goes by, 5 days goes by, 10 days goes. Why am I chasing you for money? You didn't have to chase me to get the work done, you know? And it's not that we have a bad relationship. I think it's almost like we have too good of a relationship with the client where the client doesn't feel like they really have to cough up right away. So every time I break that
Yeah.
rule, I
There's
pay for
also,
it in spades. I
there's a
eventually get it.
dollar amount that everybody is willing to shell out without, even if it's painful for them, they're willing to shell out money before you do the work. And oftentimes at car repair shops or whatever, you sometimes have to pay up front to get the work done. So it's like a process people are used to. I'm with you. I'm really uncomfortable delaying payment, especially the first payment. As we've grown our
Yeah.
clientele to bigger sizes, it's been interesting because prior to this year, I demanded all money up front before starting. Like we wouldn't work a minute unless it was paid. And it's been interesting as we've gone to bigger clients that have different procurement processes, whatever, and they're throwing their weight around, but we're also like trying to figure out how to do it. We had a case recently where they had basically it was net 15 payment, and we said we'll do your net 15, but we're not going to start the project until we get that initial payment. And they were, that's ultimately that's what we did. I just felt like we're playing with your
Yeah.
rules. We're playing within the bounds that you set. Now you play within the bounds that we set. Another example is different client. Another bigger client compared to the ones we worked with previously. They wanted all our deliverables to be specific deliverables to be tied to money. And they said, like, so the website launch will be, let's say, 50%. And we said, okay, we understand you want these payments tied to deliverables, specific milestones. We said, we're going to define the milestones. And so rather than 50% at launch, we did 10% at launch. And rather than 50%, or let's say, maybe it was 40% at staging site live, we did 20% before the first kickoff meeting, 30% when the design is approved, stuff like that, where, or maybe it I think it was design delivered, initial design delivered. So we tried to, as much as possible, tie it to deliverables we could control.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't like any payment after launch. Like by the time I put this project on your URL, I'm paid. Like I'm not chasing you down when you've got a live website, especially in those situations where the customer requires, admin roles for anything. So I do a lot of e-learning websites, and for e-learning websites, they require admin roles to be able to do some of the functions and features in the site. And it's like, if I'm giving you admin and you could add plugins or add a migration tool or whatever, I'm not playing the game. Like I'm
Yep.
not chasing you later. So I need
Yeah,
to
I'm
be
with you.
prepaid for everything.
The interesting thing about these payment rules, even the hard and fast ones at big corporations, they have ways to funnel that money quicker. They have workarounds.
Yeah.
If your
Yeah.
project is important enough and you as a provider are important enough, like they're not willing to shop it around, you can get that money quicker.
I have a pretty extensive corporate background, aviation, automotive, power sports. I've worked directly for the OEMs. I remember working for, Continental Airlines, and I worked in areas that were responsible to vendors. So a lot of times I was the purchaser, the procurement person, right? The guy in charge. And I can't tell you how many times, Toby, I watched the corporations just totally mess with people and just try and hold on to that. Even if it's a $1,500 invoice, they're like, well, we only cut checks on Thursdays and we stop cutting checks at 3 o'clock and it's Thursday at 3:15. So we won't be able to do this for another 7 days. And you're like, that is ridiculous. And we only pay by check, or we only pay by ACH, or it's like, you're a giant corporation. And you're sitting on billions of dollars. Just give them their stupid money. And to be in charge of a department at that level and constantly hear, well, you're on credit hold until we get funding for this. That tells you, crud, the company I'm working for has just jerked this person around for 180 days or whatever on payment. And so as a small business now, I'm much more firm. It's almost like the bigger the company, the more firm I am in my policy.
I do believe there's room for that. Like, I think you gotta listen to people, first of all, when you're talking about changing, because oftentimes they didn't make the policy. It's some mid-level marketer that's like, I don't know, I talked to accounting, here's what they said. And oftentimes there's room to negotiate, even on the most clearly laid out terms. And in that case I described, we got creative and figured out how to play the terms to our favor, still working within their framework. But like you're saying, I also believe what you're saying. You can set your own terms if you have the right relationship. Let me ask you, as we kind of approach the end here, also, if you're listening, send us questions. This all spurned from Simon, all the way over in Australia, who asked us a little bit of a question. Now we've been talking for 35 minutes about it. So thank you, Simon. Please submit your questions on wherever you're listening to this, or go to LinkedIn or YouTube. Let us know. So Kurt, you've been in business how long? 15 years? Something like that?
Longer. Mañana No Mas was 2008, but it was 2002 that I started making websites for other people.
So how has your discovery process changed over that time? Let's say in the last 5 years, maybe some shorter amount of time. How does it look different to an observer?
I didn't used to call it anything. I used to think it was just part of the normal workflow that any professional would follow, right? So I would just assume that I had to do this in order to do the right job. And then I started recognizing that I was leaving money on the table, or that I was getting taken advantage of. When I went from freelancer to agency, I was a one-person agency. And the only reason I call myself an agency at that stage of the game was because I rented an office and people came to the office, right? So it's like, I must be an agency if people are coming to my office. So that was in my head, my justification. And I was just doing stuff. And what I realized was people were coming in, booking time with me, making appointments, trying to scrape my brain clean of any bit of information they could get about how to run a business, start a business, increase production. And I know that sounds crazy because I'm the web guy, but I was consulting with people and saying, how do you run your business? How do you build these widgets? Because I'm thinking I need this information to kind of put into the site. And I gave out hundreds of thousands of dollars of free consulting for a long time before I realized what I had done. I had a lot of people come, meet with me, leave. never get back to me to write a check or swipe a credit card. And then I would see them at some industry function, 6 months or a year later, and they would be like, "Well, that was, meeting with you was the jump start to getting our business launched." And I'm like, okay, but I made nothing. Or worse, they took my advice, applied it horribly, failed, and then said, I didn't know what I was talking about because my advice was bad. And I'm like, you can't go tell, you didn't pay me for anything. Now I'm responsible for your failure. Like, so I started getting more, that's when I had
I
to
think that's a
define it.
great point, because that's a hard lesson I learned the hard way over 5 years. I
Yeah,
I
it
don't.
was years.
So I'm with you. When I do a coffee with a potential client, all I'm trying to share, my goal is to share our process, but no information specific to their project. So whether I'm conversing on the phone with a potential lead or I'm sharing process. Now it's a little different with RFPs, but still we're focusing on process. We were in a in-person meeting the other day, and they're like, well, how do you do copywriting? Da, da, da. We need copywriting. And we just kept referring to, well, we have a robust process where we're going to bring in our project manager. They're going to have a long conversation with your stakeholders, da, 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 da. So we're not sharing any actionable information, whether it be WordPress. We even, in the proposal in that case, we said, we're going to re-platform your theme, or we're not even, I don't even know if we said that. We're going to re-platform your site to a different WordPress technology. The goal is we're not even sharing the theme we're going to use, because we don't want, it's similar to you, we don't want them to go to beaverbuilder.com and be like, this sucks compared to Elementor or Divi, which they could very well do. It doesn't even matter. They're like, we're using something that doesn't exist anymore, and it's better than Divi, whatever the cake thing, bakery. I also screw up at this, so I want to be clear with listeners. This is a process. Just this week, Monday morning, I got a cold sales call. We'll call it cold, but it was somebody who Googled me, found me, and it seemed like a potential good lead for hosting and maybe a couple quick DNS fixes. That's kind of how I was hearing it. And so I shared too much on the call, because he's like, here's my problem. And I was like, asking him questions like the ones you're describing, like, oh, tell me more about the problem. Oh, that could be A, B, or C. Okay, I'm understanding. Da 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 da. He's like, is this weird? I'm like, no, it's not really weird. I run into this all the time, and we have a guy who's gonna fix your DNS and da da da. And then he's like, this made me madder than I've been in months. He goes, okay, that's great. I'm gonna tell my web guy this. I'm like, and I was like, wait, what's your website? He's like, no, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not comfortable. And he clicked and hung up. I was so upset, Kurt. Like, I almost called it a day at 10 a.m. because I'm just like, first of all, pissed at myself because I committed the crime the sin, this like sales and scoping sin that we just talked about. That's so painful, that I learned so painfully over and over and over again. I just did it again here 20 years later.
But you're naturally intellectually generous, obviously, because we're making this podcast together. I'm naturally intellectually generous, and when someone comes to me with a problem, I want to help them solve the problem. The problem is that the obstacle is that when you help someone generously to solve a problem, they don't go, man, you really are the expert. How much is that going to cost me to have you do it? They just go to themselves, well, if that's the answer, I'm gonna wing it and give it a shot. And it's like, you don't know what you're doing. And then when it fails, you're the scapegoat, and you made nothing, and now you've damaged your reputation. It is so hard to live and do. You know that I have a business where I train power sport dealerships how to increase their parts and labor business. Motorcycle dealerships will routinely promote a technician to service writer or service manager because it feels logical, right? And it's the worst thing that they can do to their business, because they don't have any customer service training or leadership training, or they just know how to fix motorcycles. And I'm not saying they're stupid. They just haven't been trained properly. And so customers come in and they go, oh, my check engine light's on. And this new manager goes, we see that a lot. It could be an oxygen sensor. And they go, that sounds like a great idea. They go to parts, they buy an oxygen sensor, and it doesn't fix it. And then they come back screaming. You told me it was an oxygen sensor. Now I've spent $200 and my check engine light's still on. And it's like, well, it could be your fuel injectors. It could be your ECM. It could be, you know, but it's never diagnosed at the counter is what I tell them. And then you and I are both guilty of, oh, that sounds like a DNS setting, or it sounds like you need your DKIM, re-registered to make your email work or whatever. And they go,
Yep.
oh,
And
okay, great, thanks.
it's important to note, like, especially with the website in cars, like these are great examples of we don't actually know what the answer is. Oftentimes I'm very surprised at what the answer ends up being. But yeah, I start with DKIM, DNS, like let's say email's not sending. I'm like, well, is their PHP working properly? First of all, are they set up, or, is their email configured properly? But oftentimes it's something totally different than that.
Oh, so we've covered a lot here today, Toby, and I'm looking at the list. And so it was like, what questions do you ask during discovery? I think it's so use case derived that that's not going to get us where we need to be. But I want to get to this. What is your favorite discovery deliverable? Because we both said we didn't really sell it, and then we started selling it. So what is the deliverable from a discovery?
It's a couple things. One, I want to land a recurring revenue project out of it. Could be hosting, could be security, hopefully both of those. Could be X amount of hours per month ongoing maintenance and support. And then I'm also looking to sell another high value project like SEO, which is our only other high value project. Really, we do design and SEO. And so that's my high level when I'm in these discovery processes. And a lot of it is, it's not so much about upselling. It's like, what do we do great that we can help them with? And I don't oversell it. Like if they have fast hosting, like we were doing discovery for a client recently. They're on a very fine host, not my choice, but good enough. A host we've all heard of. And I was like, I'm not going to push on that. It's secure enough. It's fast enough. I didn't talk about it at all with them. However, there's a client that we're doing discovery on right now that is on of another host that we've all heard of that is not secure, not fast. And for some reason, they're like, no, we need to use this. And so we're doing discovery right now. Part of our to-dos in the discovery is let's really dig into this hosting situation and come up with some raw data that we can then present to them and say, I know you really like this host for some reason, but here's the value we can provide on hosting.
Yeah. It's to me, I have found that particular discussion is usually just an uneducated client. They assume that if they registered the URL through that company, they have to host there. And then, so I'm like, you can break that apart. You don't, that's not a thing. And they go, oh, really? And then I go, yeah, we just got to change the name servers. If you want to own your URL, because I've heard people say, well, I'm afraid you're going to steal my company from me. How's the web guy going to steal your company? Like, come on now. But I'll say, you can have ownership of it. You still have that account. You own it. You could always change the name server back to something else if you wanted to, but we're going to manage that away from your registrar. For me, my favorite discovery deliverable is when I do the discovery and then create our standard proposal, which is normally 8 to 10 pages. I always put in like a good, better, best pricing strategy. Like good is like this meets your minimum requirement. This gets you over the finish line. Better is like, this is what it looks like if we serve you at a higher level or give you a recurring income situation. Like we're going to take care of your hosting, or we're going to take care of, we always do, whenever we do the hosting, we do the updates. So we do all the WordPress updates and plugin updates and all that. We take care of that. And then best is like where we take their core concept and we add 1 or 2 layers of some kind of premium service on top. One of the things we do at our agency, because we do e-learning, is we offer all of our clients the ability to do their client support. So any emails or phone calls that come in, like, hey, reset my password or any of that kind of stuff, we offer a service where we take over that support and they don't have to do it internally. So that becomes
One
part
thing
of
that
the
you
best
just said
client.
has underlined everything we've been saying here. The output of discovery is a proposal that you can sell.
Sell. Yes, absolutely. I think that kind of brings us to the time, my friend. I'm just going to go and say it, like, not just Simon. I really enjoyed the conversations we have too. I always come away better and
Same
have
here.
learned something.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Simon. This has been. Oh, Kurt, where can we find you on the internets?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn almost every day. I'm the only Kurt Von Ahnen there, so it makes me easy to find. And then my agency is Mañana No Mas.
I'm at the Mighty Mo.
You?
Toby Cryns on LinkedIn. Also, I want to encourage you, check out, this is a podcast sponsored and produced by the WP Minute. They have the WP Minute Plus podcast. They have a website. They're producing articles. Check it out, the WPMinute.com. They do a fantastic job over there. They even have a brand new course about hosting. So if you're curious about, hey, how do I do hosting? How do I resell hosting? That sort of stuff. They have a great course. It's free. Check it out, the WPMinute.com. This has been another episode of the Agency Action Show with Toby and Kurt. Hope you all have a great rest of the day and week.